Good evening. It is 6 p.m. and I'm calling to order the committee chairs of the Greenfield City Council. We are in the Greenfield City Hall meeting room, and this meeting is being recorded by committee chairs. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Purpose of this meeting is to prepare agendas for subcommittees for council consideration. No discussion or comments will be entertained unless requested upon by the committee chairs. So we will start with a roll call, and thank you to Councilor Solo so that we get to do this. I know your car had not what you wanted.
Oh, so Carper, you just said it again.
All right, so I don't have my list here, so I'm just gonna pretend like I know what I'm doing. We'll go to Councilor Healy. Roll call vote.
Here.
Counselor Wondolowski,
Here.
Counselor Garrett,
I am here.
Counselor Healy,
Here.
Counselor Golub,
Here.
Counselor Toronto is not. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, so our standard procedure is to go through the things that have come onto our list for this month. Figure out where they go.
Yeah.
So first is discussion of a new parliamentarian. I have no more information, so I'm going to put that for next month.
May
Yes,
Kathy requests a call from you regarding it.
okay. Thank you. Second item is authorizing $1,787.06 for the FY23 utility bill.
Ways and Means.
Ways and Means.
Mike can't say no, so he has to take it.
Okay. Made sense to me. That's what I had on my notes. Approval of amendments to the Franklin Regional Council of Governments Charter submitted by FERCog Executive Director Linda Dunleavy. Is that an A&O thing?
So basically you have only two options. You either vote it in as is or you vote no.
Okay, so that will go to the
Just go
full council.
Okay.
That's totally fine.
You
And
can't make any amendments on it.
I read it, it made sense.
Yeah.
So.
They were very excited about it too. Mike, I think you could tell.
Scheduling a special city council meeting on Thursday, May 8th at 6:30 p.m. for all zoning amendments. So I'm going to defer to,
Yeah, I'm fine with that date and that time personally. I don't know about other counselors, but I am gonna be in Worcester, but my event ends at 4, so I should be able to get right back here.
Okay, calendar.
yeah, that was okay with me.
May 8th.
And that,
The recycling gets picked up, but otherwise I'm free.
long time sorting, and I assume that will be like ADUs and all the stuff.
It's everything we're talking about in EDC, all the citizens petitions. Yep.
Okay, great. And that way we don't have to worry about it on budget day.
Which is very good.
Yes.
Next item is proposed resolution to declare Greenfield the sanctuary city for transgender and gender diverse persons, which was submitted by a Greenfield resident with support of myself. Subsequently, several counselors have also wanted to co-sponsor. I've been working with Counselor Golub, looking at other language from other places and whether or not this could be not a resolution, but an ordinance that protects gender affirming care, which is what has been done in other places, because I know some of us don't like resolutions. And so this would give us a little bit more teeth and real protection besides a resolution. So if it makes sense, I think that goes to A&O.
Sure, unless, I mean, since you're sponsored,
Counselor Golub, do you have
Well,
Or maybe it's not ready yet.
well, I would say this could go to A&O. I could also say the resolution that the community member submitted and the ordinance that I'm working on are significantly different and compatible, that I don't know that one has to stand in for the other. I know that there are diverse opinions about resolutions on the council, and I wouldn't, I know we've been talking back and forth about it, and I always
Yeah.
want to make an ordinance as opposed to a resolution, but I would, if this went forward and other people wanted to co-sponsor it, I could see this going forward as is in addition to an ordinance.
I think it makes sense if you're gonna do something like this to have as an ordinance versus a resolution. And so if we're gonna think about doing an ordinance, and again, this is just my 2 cents, I'm not,
Yeah.
shepherding this.
Yeah.
I would say probably just going with the ordinance and then maybe incorporating the language of, you could even take the resolution language and put it into the ordinance as like a preamble, Maybe that's a half measure, but
And some of it is absolutely in there
Yeah.
as that, we want to make that, I wanted to make sure that it's clear what it's for. And, some of this is signaling to the community that this is a place that we respect people and
Mhm.
keep them safe. But then also like, not just we're saying it, but we're going to do some things.
How did we do the legal immigrant
safe city ones.
safe city?
I think that
Was that an ordinance or was that?
it's in the ordinance section.
Yes.
So we're in A&O, we're looking at the different chapters, and I noticed that there's a whole chapter there. So that is not a resolution, I guess, then strictly speaking.
Yeah.
And Catherine wrote it. Right.
Yeah,
Was a referendum to the vote.
Can
That's
we,
Stephanie.
So you can mute me, I don't care.
so the safe city ordinance is an ordinance. Yeah, and I would also add that in looking at ordinances on this topic, it's been interesting to me to see other communities starting ordinances with a lot of whereas language, like resolutions start with. We don't do that frequently here, but it's been interesting to me to see that that is done. So I think that your suggestion, Councillor Garrett, of incorporating the language wouldn't be impossible.
Yeah, I think it's really just the preference of folks who are kind of shepherding this, as far as what you want to do. The only other thing, you could also have it at community relations, since you're kind of the lead sponsor on it, if you want to keep a hand on it. Which,
Counselor Golub, given the amount of things that might be at A&O as well, I'm going to ask what your preference is. Happy to have the conversation at community relations if that's one less thing off your plate, but
I go spelunking briefly.
Either one of them would work for me. Either one would be fine.
let's take it to community relations if folks are comfortable with that. Came from a community member,
I think a lot of people want to talk about it. Yeah.
and I know, they're really hoping something by Pride, which is going to be really hard given.
It's in Pride June.
Yeah. We got to do the budget too. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, so recommendation. Next thing on the list, open meeting law complaint filed against President Wondolowski and Councillor Golub of the City Council, submitted by Stephanie Duclos, March 24th, 2025, and council's request for and granting of extension of time to file response to complaint. Quinn.
All right. So we need to have that response by the 18th of the month, and we can have a full discussion about it at the city council meeting.
Okay,
It has to be in open session.
yes,
And would you like that added to the agenda?
I would look that added to the agenda.
Thank you very much.
Would you love that?
So-
Really? Would
So
you
much.
love that? I don't think you would. I know this has gone to the AG's office to review, or their open meeting office.
Mhm.
And so we're waiting
So we received an extension.
Okay.
Which is what we filed for. It was an
I see.
extension because city council's meeting would not.
Oh, I see. So we can
Exactly.
do it at the full council before it finally.
This is why I think it's very important in open meeting. Saying to, she's not here, but saying to folks like an open meeting complaint. At that point, I'm not trying to diminish the idea of the complaint, but it's be careful with what you're doing. Because man, you can be causing a real headache for the rest of the volunteers that serve on these committees when you're filing an open meeting complaint, like you need to, like, it needs to be validated. It needs to be like a real reason for doing it, not just, it can't be trivial, is what I'm saying. And I think we've had the few that we've had in the last year have been completely trivial. And they've caused like a huge headache. And
And
why
cost
would
to the
you
city.
why would you do that? Like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to make it worse for the people who are trying to contribute voluntarily for your community? Why would you do that? I just don't understand the reasoning behind that. Like an open meeting law complaint needs to have some teeth. You need to have a real reason for putting these forward. Otherwise, sit back and shut up. Like, sorry. Like,
Time and
sit
money.
back and shut up.
Time
Like
and
you're wasting our time. You're wasting our we're volunteers, you know?
Why come in the
Like,
meeting? That's
wait,
offensive,
like just
Frank.
sit back and wait for something that's actually worth talking about. Like, but you're not. So
And then,
I'm sorry, I'm gonna shut up myself right now.
No,
no, I don't, yeah,
you're good. I mean, we're,
all frustrated.
yup, and, you know, there's sort of positive intent.
I think the biggest point here is it's hard enough to do what we do. To have to tiptoe around what we do makes us even harder, and we shouldn't have to do that. I agree, there's rules to follow, and we're trying our best, and we're just people. But we're not gonna get any work done if we're worried about getting in trouble all the time, because you're gonna be concerned about consequences. So I think that's what Mike's trying to emphasize is it's a waste of time and money, and we appreciate it, but let's have a conversation. Like, reach out to the city council office before you do something like that, and let's have a conversation in the next meeting in open public and talk about it before we go to the next steps. We would appreciate that courtesy as we would give that courtesy to others, right? So we'll just leave it at that and move on.
Absolutely.
You spoke way better than I could.
No.
That was what I was trying to say. Yes, thank you, Derek.
It's
Well,
okay.
you don't want to drive conversations outside of the meeting that's being recorded, and that's what this
Correct.
creates fear. So that's, I totally appreciate both of your comments. So next on the list is the mayor's appointments and reappointments. We've got Agricultural Commission, Public Safety Commission, and the Unhoused Community Committee. Should those go to A&O?
Yeah.
Oh, you're very quiet,
Yeah.
Catherine. Go.
Turn it up.
Yeah, turn it up. Yeah.
I'm done talking. Okay, my question about this is, are we talking about it before we hear back from the AG's office? Because,
We were talking about the open meeting law, so.
right, are we talking about the open meeting law complaint before we hear back from the AG's office? Because, I mean, the question really is, our practice has been to ask questions without submitting them in writing. And what I did was submit questions in writing instead of asking them off the cuff. And if if the finding is that I should just ask those questions off the cuff, I disagree with the merits of that finding, but if that's what the AG's office says, okay. If they say that we can't ask questions, to be honest, I with Counselor Toronzo, and that we've been asking questions since we were told we couldn't a year and a half ago. But I think either way, I don't anticipate our conversation being anything new unless we have something to respond to. And so I don't know why we would have it on the agenda before we hear back from the AG's office. Because I think we'd end up having the same conversation we've been having all this time.
So I wonder if Quinn has a sense of whether or not we might have an answer by then.
So as far as I know, what was sent to the government was just a request to extend the time. I
Okay,
was not aware, so please forgive me, I was not aware that there was questions sent to the AG's office.
No,
But I will check into it tomorrow.
okay.
Oh.
And we can take it off of a agenda if we need to.
No, you cannot.
Oh,
What is,
You have
They
to
have to file a
respond,
response.
you have to respond to the open meeting law violation at the next council meeting, or you would be in violation of
okay,
open meeting law again.
So that's the reason we have to do it. It's just, we have to do it.
You have to, do
Okay.
it, yes.
So it'll be-
You have
So that's the
there's a
answer,
certain amount of
Catherine.
time.
we have to do it.
but I don't wanna, I don't wanna speak for you, Catherine. Weirdly that we're on the same level here. If we're having to bring this up because this seems to be a recurring issue, right? Is that what I'm getting from you as well? Like we've had this recurring on whether or not we're allowed to talk about things, we're allowed to have new business, if you will, on our agendas, which we haven't had in the last year and a half or so, with a disproportionate idea of how that is interpreted. And we did get a legal opinion last year that said everything we were doing prior to the apprehension of this was fine. Like we were doing everything according to the law, fine. And I've made that in public, both at council chair, I've made it at full council. Like we're doing everything the state and the law has said we're doing, and we're doing it correctly. And so we are allowed to have, according to them, and then we get a legal opinion, I think it was a year ago, 6 months ago, I don't know when the last legal opinion was. Everything we're doing is totally fine. Like we can talk about things that aren't reasonably anticipated at the time of production of the agenda. We don't have to do that. So I don't understand why we keep feeling like we have to do that, because we've been told by the lawyers it's fine. We can literally have new business. This stuff we keep putting in our agenda that says not reasonably anticipated by the chair at the time of the posting, it's jargon at that point. Like we can talk about whatever we want to talk about at a city council meeting, because that's the point of a city council meeting. Yes, we can invite folks and hopefully do it with a reasonable anticipation of when we're going to invite people. But there are things that could come up that aren't going to meet the 5-day rule. They aren't going to meet any of the little, tits and tats of that. But we are able to do that at a public meeting because that's what a public meeting is supposed to be. And I don't know why, I've said this for 3 years now. I don't know why we are even discussing this anymore. We can talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about at a public meeting because it was already posted as a public meeting, and we can't anticipate everything that's going to be discussed. And nothing in the state law, nothing in the stupid federal law now has said otherwise. We can do this every single month. And we can talk about whatever we want to talk about
Question?
and stop, like, and essentially to stop with the fear mongering about we're not allowed to do this because of some open meeting law bullshit. Like, they actually don't even say that in their own writings. They don't say that. And we've spent money in the city. We've spent money on legal opinions, looking over the open meeting law, and they've concluded exactly what I'm saying. We do not have to fear this. We don't have to worry about any of this.
You should,
It is codified.
Mike, you should say that at full council because we do have to respond to it. But what you're saying, you should say pretty much the same thing again.
I have said this. I've said this for months. That's why Derek's laughing. I know he's laughing for the exact
I
reason.
don't want to be, we're
I've said
all
the
day all
exact
over.
thing.
It's
Like,
gonna-
how many more times do I have to say it?
Hopefully
We
this is
have
the last one.
codified this. We've gotten a legal opinion and we have adjudified this as much as we possibly can. That we
Totally.
can talk about what we're going to do without it having to be written in the 5-day rule. Like, we don't know what's going to happen.
My picture's being taken. I'm very distracted. Sorry.
It's fine. You can take my pictures.
We do need to.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We're
And I've got a-
off this-
Okay.
the
I've got a
agenda.
question from Counselor Golo.
Well, I'm not concerned about this, and I agree with what Counselor Toronzo said. I don't think that this is where we have the debate. I'm more curious, this is where we set the agenda for council. And so my question is, what are we are supposed to be writing like, how do we formulate the 13 of us on council floor? How do we formulate a response? What is to be discussed?
So what's
Yeah, what's the
expected,
process?
what's expected of us?
It's everybody's.
So-
opinion.
So I'm gonna let Quinn answer, who knows more than,
So what I'm going to do is refer you all to speak with the city clerk,
okay,
who actually has that process memorized.
okay,
And we can work from there.
okay.
Thank you.
I will talk to the
Thank you.
clerk and make that so whatever we need to do,
Do you
but
think, once we get a process from Kathy, do you think she could send an email to counselors just detailing that process? So
Yes.
we all kind of are walking and aware of the situation
yeah,
or know our expectancy?
Is it a vote? Is it a discussion?
Exactly.
right,
That'd be super helpful.
okay. All right, so I had a few discussion items. One, we got an email that was a public testimony request by resident Al Norman. It was also making all public emails
For a meeting, right?
before a meeting public. We have responded saying there's a lot of different implications in making everybody's emails public. Both time for the clerks to redact personal information. I had concerns about just people won't send stuff in if they think it's all gonna get on a website. But the one that I thought was interesting let me retract that. I didn't say that. The other piece that could be discussed by us, and so we'd have to decide which committee this goes to, but whether or not if somebody does give public testimony and maybe written testimony, could that be posted on the city's website for a transparency issue? So would we want to send this to a committee to talk about?
I mean, we certainly can talk about it. I have other.
Or do you want to kill it right now?
I kind of want to kill it right now.
I hope not.
I think there's a process in place. If you want records of our emails, you could put a public record request in and
Yep.
do what everybody else does. This is more work for the clerk's office. It's more work for us that we don't need to be doing.
It also encourages spam style emails
Yep.
to just stack the deck with, oh, let's say
We
the
have too
exact
many
same
of them already.
language over and over and over again to make it look like there's overwhelming support for an idea when in fact it's orchestrated by a person. or
Well,
two.
what I was thinking.
Oh, the ones
When
we get,
people
you mean?
send us
The ones we
their
already get?
like written public testimony, whether.
Right. Yeah, no.
I know at the state level, that's what gets.
And I think
If they send us a testimony and they feel so strongly behind it that it should be public, they should come to the meeting and present it in public comment.
Well, they do both usually.
Then it's as public as you could get.
Good enough.
We already have an avenue for this to happen
I mean, we've sat
and don't saturate it.
We've sat in through meetings with 3 hours of public comment. before.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, we're used to hearing from the public. Let's keep it that way.
And it is public record, so somebody can do a public records request, and if there's a financial burden to that, then because it goes under the clerk's office, that's part of, that's public meeting law, you know, it's open meeting. law.
Stupidest thing I've.
They can pay the
ever
fee.
heard Presented to us.
10 cents a page.
$20 an hour.
So
A
Exactly.
bargain, right?
next.
Thank you, Al, for wasting more of our taxpayer dollars. You've done this for 35 years.
All right, so we've addressed it, the
Mhm.
issue, and we are.
Dead. In the water?
Mhm.
All right, I don't know the process for, but we have the new committee. I sent to, it got sent out, the people that are being, that I am appointing. I think doesn't need to go beyond that. So you all have that. I'm saying that out loud for committee chairs. So those,
You want to send that to the full council,
we can do that to, yeah, so
unless you wanted to go through A&L, right? Yeah.
no, let's send it to the full council.
Well, it looks like it already is. Is
Was
that
on Anna's.
Pamela Goodwin and Zoe Smith?
Those are the
The
mayors to
Oh,
appointments.
those are the mayor's appointments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and that's going through.
May I ask?
And I think the council president has the authority to do it anyways, right? So we don't need to
Yes.
vote on it. So
Yep. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd like to know who you would like to appoint as the chair.
Counselor Brown.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
you said you were bored.
Yeah, well, we wanted to, someone in the council,
I know, I have a lot of others. Put you in charge of them.
I'm sorry. I knew I was gonna get it in there somewhere.
Yes.
Have that announced.
Okay,
You have a little good volunteer to do ways.
and so actually, the appointments of the mayor don't need to go through A and O for Pamela Goodwin and Zoe.
Okay.
Those.
All right. They may have to,
Okay,
but I will swing back with Kathy about it.
yeah, or if it's a matter of me. We started talking about this, but just, I was thinking about this whole process of submitting questions for the mayor and departments and how to balance between, if it's a complicated question, that people get a heads up ahead of time, but so that it doesn't dominate the whole discussion like it did last month.
Yeah.
And that was a problem, and I didn't anticipate it when it kind of happened that way. So
I would agree. If you're looking for statistics or numbers, or you have to give the person a chance to prepare that, because then they're up there scrambling, trying to think, and they're panicking and they're going, oh, grab, and they don't know. And it's not a good look for anybody, really. Like, I think it's only fair that you submit those questions. And if you come up with a question in the future that might have a financial implication or number tied to it, just write it down in a book and send it for next month. We meet every month, so.
Or ask it and don't expect an answer.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Right.
would you all like maybe the process to be that the full city council asks questions of the mayor or department, and then they can respond to any that were sent in writing, just so it doesn't,
I'm not quite sure I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of like of timing,
I
so.
think you could put it on the agenda that way, where it's where it says formally submitted questions to the mayor's office and list those questions, and they could go through those ones first.
Okay,
And then any other questions for the mayor not recently anticipated or something like that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the ones that were submitted
Mhm.
take precedence.
Right.
Like, I certainly don't want folks to, what we ran into last month.
Right.
Got a lot of shit for this one. If we're asking questions, like you're saying, give folks time to respond. And that I agree with entirely. We ran into a thing last month where one department was given some preloaded questions and then responded to them very quickly. I mean, we've asked them for other information and have been stonewalled. So that's where my blowback was last month. That aside, and going forward, I agree, we should have a process or a method for this. And we should also hold the departments, no matter who it is, to respond to that in a timely manner. I don't care which department it is. If we ask for it, if as a finance committee, we ask for information, there is no reason 30 days is not the next month. That is not egregious. That is not an over ask. You should definitely be able to deliver within 30 days. Absolutely. If the school department asks, if anybody from the school department asks for information, they should definitely get their information within 30 days of it to be able to respond at their next monthly meeting. If DPW, that's what I mean, to level the playing field, right? If any question is asked, especially a financial question asked, and especially during a budget season, I will take this close to the vest right here. If anybody's asked, where's your money going? And you can't give me an answer within 30 days, that sounds nefarious, is what it does. That sounds like you're hiding something. And now I'm gonna over question you on why you couldn't deliver that amount to me. Every department should be able to answer that question any time of the year within 30 days. That's what I'm saying.
right.
If you can't, then you're not functioning within your department well enough, and you should be removed.
I don't want to get into done the budget.
So here,
Well, no, it's not even on a budget. I'm talking about a functional aspect of a department.
I think
If you can't answer a functional departmental question within 30 days, you actually do not have a reason to be ahead of that department. You should be able to do that. That's a long time. That's a full month. So and we're only going to ask those questions probably in the month of March or April or whatever, like you're supposed to submit your stuff in September. But if you can't do that, then you should probably walk away from your department. Because you can't, you're essentially saying, I can't complete the function of this department, so somebody else should step in and take my place, is what I'm saying.
I think a good process maybe would be, so we answer any questions previously submitted are answered at the meeting. Any questions asked afterwards, as long as it's not an open meeting law violation, are, if they can't answer it, it's recorded by the clerk's office and it's put on the agenda under old business for future discussion. And now it's documented, and if they come back to the next meeting 30 days later and they still can't answer the question, everything's documented and we have a way to keep track of who's doing their job and who's not doing their job. And there's some accountability there.
I like that. I like the accountability part. Yeah,
That's a great
that's what I'm trying to say. Get some sort of like real
Instead of
finite process
Yeah.
in how we're going to have accountability for anyone
Mhm.
who's having to respond to
And
financial.
Sorry to interrupt.
Counselor Golub has her hand up.
Okay, I'm gonna take Counselor Dolan.
Thank you for seeing that. So a couple of things. One, I really like the idea of putting it onto old business and having that system for accountability because I agree that people should be responding and that feels like a way to do that. I'm wondering, your question, Counselor Wondolowski, was it how to have, I think I'm hearing two questions. How to have all counselors have a chance to ask questions and how to make sure people have a fair amount of time to respond is, because I have a response to those, but I want to make sure I'm understanding your questions first. Were those kind of your questions at the beginning of this conversation?
They were, because I want to, what I noticed even when I asked the questions of the fire chief the month before, that's what he started to focus on. And I didn't want that to drown out any other questions from counselors. So, they're going to go what comes out first. And one comment, ironically, the 1 month that we put the questions in, we get an open meeting law when every other month we don't put questions in and we can talk about anything under the sun
Yeah.
and there's not an issue. So that's how
I agree.
done editorialized. Catherine,
Some thoughts about that. One is, I think if we have a standard practice that we're all used to, I think that helps. So I think this conversation is important. So for example, if we were to decide that if anyone submits questions in writing, those are written first, and the person who's answering the questions understands that more questions might be coming and that people can ask questions, I think that works. And I also think that it's completely reasonable to say, hey, you got this question last night. You don't have the numbers yet. That's okay. I don't think I need to convince anyone that my intent was to give people more heads up, and that I would have been totally okay. It's totally reasonable to me if people were to say, you gave me the short amount of time, I'll give it to you a couple days from now. I think that we can say that to people if they're not ready to answer the questions. So I'm hearing questions in writing first, but stating that there may be more and that people are able to say more, and that if questions are not responded to within 30 days, they'll be put on old business. That's kind of like the proposal that I think I'm hearing from all of us together.
yes.
Yeah, I think it's important, regardless if it's responded to or not, that at the next city council meeting, that question is addressed. So the public has the ability to hear the response to the question.
Yes.
So I think you need to, even if they send us an email 15 days later with the response, they should come to the city council meeting and tell us what their response was to those open questions. So it's in public.
That's a really good point, because some of these things we only get over email and
Mhm.
only the council is seeing it. And
And you get it like 2 hours before the meeting.
yeah, well, that too. And we haven't had,
So
I'm driving and reading at the same time. And that's-
you're like, oh, shit. Yeah, there.
Your car drives itself though, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. I got one of those.
Yeah.
Counselor Garrett, did you have another comment or are we good?
No, I mean, the only thing that just came to mind is this would be addressed in the old business section, which is later on the agenda, these answers to these questions. So presumably, like, if it was a question of the mayor, they would stick around to that section to answer it, or like, so I'm just thinking, because we have that 10-minute limit on the amount of time they present. Oh, this is questions though.
We could move it though.
That's true. If
We could suspend the rules and move old business up if we needed to.
we anticipate that, right, we would be able to say, okay, let's add.
Can we eliminate the anticipate part of all of our stuff? Like,
Well, you have to.
you can't anticipate it.
No, but I think what he's saying is like, we know that there's old business.
Right.
Let's just put it on the agenda. And if we decide to suspend rules and procedures, we can move that up to.
Right.
I feel like we're gonna have to then every month suspend the rules of procedure because our rules of procedure are flawed.
Is there a way, instead of putting it under old business,
This-
under questions for city officials, we could just have?
It just constantly rolls back.
It all depends on the rules of procedure.
See, there you go.
Maybe we should be talking about changing the rules of procedure.
Maybe we should be talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, get rid of the rules of procedure.
There are no rules.
Well, because the rules suck, dude. The rules are flawed. The rules suck.
We're allowed to change how our
Yes,
meeting
any-
is developed.
Yeah.
It's just a simple majority though.
Yeah.
I think that we need to really actually talk about this because things have become so convoluted. I'm sorry, I sound like the Pied Piper here, like where I'm trying to do the good and it sounds like I'm being an asshole about it, but I'm not. Like, I want this to function well. That was the whole reason that I even ran for government at all. I saw a bad thing happening and I wanted to run for good. And so I think that we need to really realign our rules of procedure at this point. If we're going to be that tight knit and convoluted about it, then unfortunately we need to be that tight knit and convoluted about it when we're talking about how we're going to emphasize these rules. Is we want to get business done and we don't want it to interfere with what we're doing. So instead of being in our own way, essentially, we're tripping over ourselves.
We are.
Is what we're doing. We're tripping over ourselves. I think you guys can all relate to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's not do that anymore. Let's if we're going to do anything with the point of ordinances, which I hate that. I hate that entire thing, but that's my own thing. If we're going to do anything about changing how we're going to do the rules of procedure, why don't we do it so we're not tripping over ourselves? And we don't have these continued conversations. We can just eliminate them and get the business done. That's what I'm looking for.
So
Counselor
so
Golub.
we need to stick with the question.
Okay. Counselor Golub, did you?
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, the rules of procedure are like govern how we operate as city council. And we're doing an ordinance review right now. So if there's a specific rule of procedure that a counselor has a challenge with, I would invite I'd invite you to bring that question to, I'd be happy to have that conversation. Part of the rules of procedure are about how we have the agenda order, the typical agenda order. And I think that
We
it's,
are off topic now.
Okay, we're off topic. We gotta,
so we are off topic. We can always have a quick vote to change the agenda order.
Okay.
I think if other counselors are allowed to talk off topic, I want to be able to respond to what was
yeah,
said.
just you don't see Quinn's eyes.
But
Oh, no.
I'm just naming where we're at. Right now, we're talking
Yeah.
about how we have our meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm naming.
Well, we're
what-
specifically talking
Well,
about the mayor, the questions to the mayor and how we can optimize that. So let's roll it back to that a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
And say, if we take old business, which is questions for the mayor, and we just end up voting to move it before public comment, then we're good, right?
Right.
And then we'll just leave
And if
that
we
there.
don't like how that works, then that's our rules and procedures, to your point,
To your point, yep.
Change the rules.
And we'll change
it to a better way.
so that we can have that conversation about the questions,
It's like you,
right?
think about politics as filibusters. So you gotta always relate back to the original topic somewhere in your filibuster, right?
There we go.
if
I
the-
could do it.
If you want old business to be in a different place in the agenda, that's another discussion, is what I'm trying to say, and that it
Yeah.
can't be a quick vote to move that. But back to the conversation about, the one thing that I would caution us on is if we always had, I think that we shouldn't codify having department heads have to respond to old questions, because we run the risk we run the risk of having even longer meetings. So I think that that should be up to the discretion of the chair, whether you choose to have people answer the old questions or not, because I can imagine that just being a long.
I don't think that was brought up at all.
No, I'm not responding to you. I'm responding to Counselor Healy. Because I think it's a really good idea. I just think that there should be discretion there, lest we have incredibly long meetings. Even longer meetings.
I think if I'm, again, it's just the way that this committee chairs works, those questions would be under old business. If theoretically, if we adopted something like this, and then they would come to this committee chairs, sorry, it's not a committee, right? And then we could dispense of them as we so chose. So
Yes.
if it's like a long list of questions and some of them no longer seem relevant, or frankly, if the council president, whoever that is, either Laura right now or somebody in the future, they could dispense of them if they didn't feel like it was going to be productive for that meeting. So I think your concern makes a ton of sense about like the length of the meeting. And I also totally agree about keeping it in the discretion of the chair, but I think no matter what we do, the president of the council would still retain that ability. So I totally agree with what you're saying, but I think we're safe from that risk. As long as we have a council president who doesn't want a longer meeting, which I think we do.
But future ones will want long meetings.
Yes, they will. That's why they'll run.
Yes, Laura, you want longer meetings? Is that what you?
That's what I'm running.
That what you read on?
Yeah. That is exactly.
All right.
I think all our meetings since I've been running it have been shorter. So that's any indication.
You've only been here 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah.
I'm really waiting for
Oh,
it.
I know, don't break my, it's like the White Sox are like undefeated, right?
They're not.
They were like first in their, I'm not a White Sox fan,
They
so
were.
I'm just laughing. Okay, council participation in the citywide cleanup in April is requested by Greenfield resident Judy Bennett. So we got an email from Judy and was asking if the council wanted to be involved. I would just wanted to bring it to you all. I asked her what she thought would look like for us being involved and she didn't know. So I don't know if this is just like announce it at the, maybe we can get the mayor to announce it and then we're done. Unless anybody has any other ideas or wants to do a cleanup in your precinct. So I already contacted her about that.
I think that makes sense. An announcement.
I asked a few years ago under the, I call it the Bruce Brownstein Act at that time of having a day where we would, he's still alive. I actually talked to him yesterday. He's a guy who is one of those folks who, went out and cleaned up our streets that,
Oh,
no.
no.
Nobody really cared about. Like you see the guy, you're like down there. I was like, but he's a wonderful person. And he cleaned up the streets. He didn't have a car to drive or anything
The guy
like
would
that.
walk and pick up.
He would pick up.
He'd be on Coleraine
everything.
Road all.
He
the time,
would,
Yeah,
absolutely. He'd be on Coleraine Street, Coleraine Road.
thank you.
Yep.
Plain
And
Road.
absolutely, he did the meadows like you read about. And you did. And I wish that somehow our tax dollars could have bought him a car. Because he would have done the rest of the community. But he couldn't. And he still does it to this day. He called me yesterday and he asked me about if I have any leftover leaf blowers, because he knows that I had a landscaping business. He didn't even know I closed 3 years ago. And he said he used to help my dad out. And he said, do you got any Shindawas? And I was like, Shindawa is not even a thing anymore. Echo bought Shindawa years ago. He didn't even know that, but he wanted to know because he wanted to continue to work on cleaning up our streets. And I think that it is very important that we support any initiative to have, civilians clean up the streets and anything we can give them, if we can give them, I don't know, if we can talk with the the assessor about, we have different modifications that we use for veterans, for other folks to get some sort of tax breaks. I think it's something we should explore for folks who are gonna help out the community in that way. And they're not getting paid for it. We're not
Like a
asking.
kind of civilian corps going.
Yeah,
back to the
like we're not asking them to do, like, we're not asking them, to be on the payroll. And we're not giving them benefits, like they're not getting health insurance and, such. But if they're going to be helping us clean up the area that we're doing, and we're not doing enough ourselves, to be frank, to do that, like, we should give them some sort of, maybe it's tax relief, right?
Counselor Toronto, is that something you might want to explore?
I certainly will.
That sounds like a Ways and Means thing to me.
It does.
Thank you, Derek. Yes, yes, all right. So I don't write these things, and I can't do the whereases and withals and
Just it.
all those. Well, I do, but I do it in such a not legal language that people want it to happen. But I do. I really feel like there's a place for that to happen, and something to give back to folks who are, like, I know Alan Collins, he might have, was he on this one? He's not on this one, but he's been on a lot of committee meetings. I see him walking up and down Country Club Road, and he's picking up trash all the time. Like,
Could do a resolution.
like summer, winter, doesn't matter. This guy's just huffing it left and right, like doing the 3 mile, walk one way, 3 mile back, picking up stuff. And like, doesn't he deserve some sort of reprieve from his
Don't wanna get
taxes?
too-
Like, he's
Yeah, too far off the
right?
top, yeah.
He's helping. So, sorry.
No, I appreciate the conversation. Counselor Golub.
No, I actually had a question about, I'm not sure if we're complete with this item, but there was an item on the agenda that we skipped over, I think.
Yeah,
So
was that the community relations scheduling of pre-sec?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I totally,
Okay. I was wondering that.
I saw it.
okay, sorry about
That's
that.
gonna be my next comment too. was
Figured
the
it'd come up
next
eventually.
item.
Okay, thank you. So, we talked in community relations about going back to the practice of having whatever it is, meeting with public, that would be 3 precincts at a time. And so we talked about April, July, and October being the 3 months, sort of being able to split it up. And suggestion was April for 7, 8, and 9, mainly because Wid and myself could be prepared and get that moving more quickly. July for 1, 2, 3, and October for 4, 5, 6. So just wanted to,
Catherine's got her hand up again.
and so I wasn't on the council when this was a practice, but it sort of started to die out. I know we have to worry about open meeting and not having quorum and all of that stuff. And, recognizing that a counselor, one of the 3 might not be able to make it. And that we'll take notes for them from what citizens from the precinct say, if that's works for folks. If that works, we can just put this on email and then get it onto the committee schedules. And then Counselor Bullock.
May I?
Yes.
So there is a couple things about that one. You are required to send out postcards to every citizen.
Really?
Yes. So it needs to be in your budget because it would come out of the city council's budget. If the mayor called it, the mayor's office would have to take the budget, but they're not required to do that unless it's an even numbered year. I have precinct meeting, if you would like to look at it.
Okay,
Um, basically, if the mayor does it, you do not have to have an agenda. There's no open meeting law to have to be followed. If you guys do it, open meeting law has to be followed. There has to be an agenda.
huh,
It has to be hybrid.
okay, we're not doing this,
Yeah, sounds good.
okay.
All right,
Aaron Schroeder, right?
sounds awesome.
Let's see. what
Thank you,
Catherine
open
has to
meeting
say.
law.
Catherine?
Thank you, open meeting law, for giving us the big middle finger.
But, but we could work with the mayor and still do it and still have our citizens be able to talk about.
For operation.
Counselor Golub,
Yeah, I was going to say, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to what Quinn said, that there is an ordinance on precinct meetings that that does say that it has to happen on even years. I'm wondering, and I know that since I've been on council, that it hasn't, I don't think that this has happened. And so I am curious if this would be something that the mayor would want to do this year, or if they intend to do it next year. But I thought it would be helpful to know that it's a pretty short ordinance, but it says that the mayor needs to send out the postcard to every household in the precinct. I know that's why I'd raise my hand to let folks know that
Is that in our ordinance that says we have to send it, or is that general law?
It's like, that's part of the ordinance.
an ordinance. It was an
Okay.
ordinance.
Can we change the ordinance in A and O to say we could post it online
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, the
rather than
ordinance.
send postcards?
Yeah, it's something that I've wondered, and I was going to reach out to the mayor's office about too, because I don't know if we're in compliance. I don't know if we've been doing this, and the intent seems really good, but maybe there are ways to make it more doable. And yeah, it's within our purview to edit any existing ordinance. So
okay,
yeah,
So-
it's one that I've been curious about because we haven't been. I don't think
Okay.
that's.
okay,
Yeah.
so this will not go on to any agendas for now.
It's a disappointing fact to learn about the postcards. It's just like, what a logistical.
Yeah, well, we
nightmare.
could circle this back around to A and O after. you know,
Because we are doing ordinance
We are doing
review
ordinance
right now,
review,
so that would
right,
be
so-
great.
Sign this.
thing. Okay.
And if not now.
Yeah, sure.
All right, the last thing, before we talk about your committee agendas, proposed ordinance establishing an opioid use and prevention commission, submitted by Counselor Balla. So does that need to go to A and O before it goes to full council?
It is at A&O, and I reached out to Tammy. It was a typo that it wasn't put under A&O. It should be under motions for A&O. We're ready to vote on it.
Okay, fantastic.
So it needs a public hearing.
Apparently it needs a public hearing.
And that, A&O?
And I'm sorry. I didn't-
Yes, please.
So I was told that this one and the solid waste would both
Oh, right.
need to be at a public hearing. Can't happen in April because we are past the deadline to submit. It must be in May
Okay.
or
Or bust.
Okay.
you can
Doing that.
see, or you can go as city council in the middle of the budget season.
Say
As
that
the
again?
public hearing, the public hearing can be held in city council. Or you can wait.
So if it goes to public hearing in May, then it won't be on our agenda till June.
Correct.
So the only reserve I have on the ordinance that I sponsored with Marlo is when does he plan on operating those trucks with the grant? And does it need to happen before June? If it does, then I would suggest we just suck it up and get it on the city council meeting in May. As crappy as it
It's
sounds.
fine.
I think that's a reasonable thing to do. I do. think-
If there are timeliness, legit timeliness things, like we attended them.
Last year, we switched our ordinance to be from dual stream to single stream, so I hope that's enough. And if it isn't, then I think it makes sense to do it.
So
I did a meeting well on Sunday.
So
Yeah.
I'm hearing May.
Unless we have to do it soon. right?
Yeah, and again, I would say the same thing about Counselor Bullock's ordinance. We should have a conversation with her and just see if it needs to happen before June or if
Unless
that's.
Counselor
Unless you could
Golla,
answer
can
that, Catherine.
Like, that's what I mean, is it like tied into like a grant,
There's
like?
money is tied up until the committee is established.
Yeah,
Like, if it's split between
Right,
months.
so what are those? It's important to know what those timelines are, like if we don't, if it's like by December, then.
I'm gonna let.
we don't need to do it right now.
Sir.
I'll answer with a couple questions. First, I just want to make sure, Quinn, you're saying that it's too late to put the public hearing on A&O next week. That's correct?
That is correct. Unfortunately, Friday was the deadline to have it placed in the paper.
Okay. And so the public hearing has to happen. It couldn't, and also public hearing public hearing can't happen the same day that it's voted on. Could it? Like, could the public hearing, I feel like I should know this answer, but I don't know for certain. Can the public hearing happen at the April council meeting and it be voted on at the April council meeting?
Unfortunately, I cannot answer that question at this time. but
Yes, I think yes.
Okay, because if it could be, and can A&O vote to recommend before a public hearing, or does a public hearing have to happen before A&O recommends?
Logically, it makes sense, to do the recommendation after the hearing, right?
Right, and so if it can't, so if that, I agree in theory, that makes sense to me. So it sounds like the soonest. First of all, Quinn, if you could help, I should know these answers just as much as anyone else should. So if you get the answers to these questions, can you let me know so that we just are on the same page from now on? Does that make sense, Quinn?
Yes, it does. Unfortunately, I don't have those answers. That is more of the city clerk's purview, so I will have a discussion with her on those.
Okay.
The only reason that I said what I said, and don't hold me to it, because please don't hold me to it. A lot of our public hearings happen on the same day. We literally hold public, not the EDC ones. If you guys remember, in normal council, we will literally read a public hearing, open the public hearing, close the public hearing a minute later, and then vote on it. Like,
Yeah.
it's all in the same day. So that's why I'm saying I think it's fine. But I'm definitely not in that position to say, while I'm sitting here saying I think it's gonna be okay, I do not want you guys to hold me to that. And then all of a sudden we get
It's kind of,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
up a creek without a paddle.
So it sounds like I'm hearing if it's okay, then we would get it on the April agenda
For city
for
council.
city council.
And I'll have to say it 4 times that same night, which is typically what happens.
So I'm looking at section 2.9 of the charter, ordinances and other matters. Subsection B says measures in general. The city council may pass measures through all of its stages at any one meeting.
Okay,
All right.
Except proposed ordinances provided the no city council. So if somebody objects to it, then somebody can kibosh it. So if there's one person who says, no, we don't want to do this in one meeting, that can happen. But otherwise it can happen.
Jasper is no longer on our committee, so.
Um,
Who's gonna stand in? Okay.
Yeah, I know.
so
So-
given that
Sorry, I said that out loud.
if that's the case, then I think that we are ready, given the feedback and lack of any pushback on either of these ordinances. I have not heard from a single person pushing back on either of these ordinances. I would say that we would be ready to take them up as motions at the A&O April meeting. And if it is true that the hearing and the vote can happen both in April, then I would say that as long with your consent, Counselor Wondolowski, then we would be ready for that in April.
I would welcome that, given what is gonna happen in May and June. So having some things now would be good. Anything else? Otherwise, I think we've gone through all the items unless I've skipped something else that I didn't. notice. So EDC committee. Any changes? This all look,
This all looks correct. We had the 4 zoning amendments and they detail them out down below. And then the last item was just something I brought as a discussion. We have Amy Callahan and Hannah coming to the meeting. I'm gonna tell them to come around 7 rather than 6:30, 7:30, so they don't spend an hour in there, but that's basically to discuss examine the possibility of a parking benefit district in downtown, and we've been working with Amy and the mayor and to see what we could do there, so.
Super interested to hear that discussion.
okay. Any other comments related? Okay, then we'll move to A and O. So,
Yeah, so we've got appointments. Did we say that we wanted the approval of the FRCOG charter on our agenda? We talked about that earlier, or did,
I think we said it doesn't need that it goes
right?
because we can't change it. We can't do anything. So I think it comes off your agenda.
And then I have requested just for the clerk to hold the a space if we want to talk about how we are reviewing the ordinance. There's the review of the principles and process of that. And then the following items are almost all responses to our request to department chairs, department heads to let us know if they had suggestions for updating the ordinances. And some of these, they said no, some of them they said yes, but this is the list of people who responded. And also Christian LaPlante is going to come and give answer questions about the Crossroads Cultural District Committee and Local Cultural Council, which are two new ordinances to structurify those two bodies. But also along with these, again, I asked Tammy to put, and if you could double check this, Quinn, that would be great, under motions that we just talked about, the solid waste and the opioid funds. Those will be under motions.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think that covers it all, correct? All right. All right.
I was told that I have to tell you the review of the city of Greenfield ordinances versus charter, where it says the review of bylaws. We have to strike the word bylaw and resubmit it as ordinance.
Oh, because bylaws are for towns.
Correct.
Okay.
That's it.
That's a charter change that we need to make, or?
Nope, just I needed to announce it here.
Okay.
It'll get back to us.
All right. So community relations, we will need to change our date of our committee meeting. So I will get that done very quickly. And probably we'll just go for the.
Fun for you.
Okay. We'll find a date.
I love that that is a Massachusetts only holiday. My favorite kind of holiday.
Patriots Day?
Patriots Day. Oh, it's in Maine, does it?
In Maine.
May I
Yeah,
introduce?
that's
How dare you forget
I know.
our old
our
folks?
lost territory.
We gave it away. It was a compromise of 1851.
Honestly, it's a pretty good deal. It's for us.
It was a good deal.
So Tammy recommends two different options for changing.
Okay.
The proposed date would be either on a Friday, because that's when there's time, or prior to the council meeting. So a 6 o'clock CR meeting.
CRE.
Oh.
We could probably do that.
Yeah.
Looking at Councilor Brown, who's on the committee as well.
Let's do it up.
How, I should know this, but
Because
if
no one knew it was all.
I checked with others and got back to the clerk tomorrow, is that adequate?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I'll write that you're going to check in.
Anyway.
Okay. And everything for our committee, I think, is on this list, so we are good to go. Ways and Means, what don't you have on your list?
Like nothing. I have nothing but the budget.
Yeah, the entire weight of that.
Yeah, the weight of the world,
Kind of,
as it were.
Absolutely do, so.
Hmm.
I have,
Do you have anything extra? No,
I don't think so, right?
is it just,
Well, there was one thing that got added to your agenda. It was, utility bill,
Oh, yep, that was it.
transferring of $1,800.
that's gonna be a problem.
23 to 25.
It's gonna be a real problem.
Okay.
That's why you're the man
I
for the
think you
job.
should push that to May. I'm totally joking. April Fools.
And I know we don't have enough time. How are you doing with scheduling all the budget hearings?
They're already scheduled.
Fantastic. I'll look at the schedule and I won't ask you what they are.
They're all in April,
It's right.
15th, 23rd, and 30th.
Okay. And then we've got the draft council meeting agenda and right here, so.
So the first one is our normal meeting on the 15th, which is the day before the full council meeting. And then we're doing the 2 Wednesdays following that, the 23rd and 30th. The 15th will consist of on schools and the
DPW.
DPW, right. Schools and DPW, and then, thank you, John. The 23rd will be the rest of the departments that we've so-called the small departments. The small departments and public safety.
Okay.
And the 30th will be the deliberations. So, and those are all at 6:30. I know Tammy sent a thing to remind folks, but it was kind of in like a footnote.
Okay.
So I just want to point that out to all of you folks and anybody else. We normally meet at 6, but those meetings will all be at 6:30 in April.
Okay. So, and then we said that we will be doing the other 2 ordinances at this agenda meeting, so DPW and opioids, so that will go onto the agenda.
For the public hearing.
Yeah.
We did miss a section again.
Okay. Anything else that I'm missing that we said we would?
Oh, city clerk report.
So nomination papers are coming out. April 24th. And
Nope. What's that?
we request the ability to speak about the nomination papers at the council meeting so that
Great.
the word can get out.
I did ask the clerk to do that, so thank you for.
There's a lot of seats left, right?
Yes.
Everybody's, no.
I knew that one. I knew about you.
Mine,
Yeah.
there's wide open, in case it was wondering.
Any other business? Right, it is 7:14. I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll
Aye.
call.
Counselor Wondolowski,
Yes.
Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Golub.
Yeah.
Counselor Toronto.
Absolutely.
We are adjourned. Thank you all for being here. See you next time.